Hey, friends. Welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas, and we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
Okay, David, I want to read a quote to you.
Please.
If you're not paying attention to how you affect other people, you're missing a big piece of what makes life work. What you don't know about yourself can hurt you, others, and your relationships.
Say who said that wise remark.
Suzanne Stabile, of course. And boy, did that one get me.
Yeah.
Feels so true. And it feels exactly like why we're diving into what we're diving into over the next several weeks.
And it honestly feels appropriate that we would kick off this part of the Parenting Personality series on the Enneagram with a quote from our dear friend Suzanne Stabile, because we would both say that she has hands down taught us the most about the Enneagram. She's our favorite Enneagram teacher. And so
Absolutely.
we are going to be quoting her all throughout this time and sharing things we've learned through all of her decades of studying this great ancient wisdom tool.
Yes. And we're excited to bring all that we've learned through her and how we see that walked out in parenting.
Yes.
And we talked about this recently, but why wouldn't we want to grow? Why would we not want to grow? Those of us who love kids or in relationship to anyone else. In fact, we would love for you to share these episodes with your kids' grandparents, with aunts and uncles, with educators. I mean, really anybody in your life. You don't have to be a parent to hopefully learn from and glean from the growth and grace that's going to weave all throughout these conversations.
Agreed.
Okay, so here's where we want to start. More specifically, why would you say it feels important to talk about the Enneagram as part of our Parenting Personality series?
So one of the classes that I teach is called Being a Purposeful Parent. And starting out that class, I talk about the lifelong study on behalf of the kids we love of development and temperament. Like, I think those are two things we want to stay committed to as the kids we love grow and change and mature. And there's so much, we talked about this all throughout the Ages and Stages season, that I think makes sometimes concerning behaviors or struggles that we'll see with kids make sense when we think about it through the lens of development and thinking, oh, that's normal. A lot of 10-year-olds experience that. And our hope with studying temperament and using this great tool of the Enneagram is that we can have some of those exact same aha moments where we're thinking, oh my goodness, as I'm learning about the nines, that makes perfect sense. And so we're going to be, as we've been talking all throughout this series, learning a lot about ourselves and hopefully learning a lot about the kids we love. So that would be a framework in thinking about the why. But Sissy and I would want to acknowledge there are a lot of incredible tools out there. I was trained in the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI. A lot of you listening probably took that for the first time in college or maybe at your first job. There is the DISC. There is Strengths Finders. There's so many great tools out there that are vehicles for learning. This just happens to be a particular tool that we love for a couple of reasons. One, because having used the Myers-Briggs for a lot of years, you get 4 letters with the Myers-Briggs, and that's a lot of information to take in. I love with the Enneagram, you're only working with one number.
Yes.
So feels like less to manage. But more importantly, I would argue, and you tell me if you agree or not, I would argue that I think it's the tool that's most compatible with spiritual formation. I've not experienced another tool that created as much opportunity for my growing in my relationship with Christ as the Enneagram. So it feels like I'm learning so much about myself. I'm learning so much about the people I love and do life with. I am learning so much about the God I love too. So I think there's just layer on layer on layer of benefit that we've discovered. Secondly, I would say I think it's a really user-friendly roadmap. So we're going to be talking about, the wisdom of the Enneagram would say there's 9 ways of seeing the world. and 9 different ways of operating in the world. And our dear friend Suzanne says that you can't change how you see, but you can change what you do with how you see. And that's a really important distinction to make. So let me give an example of that. So Sissy and I are both Enneagram 1s. We're going to be talking a lot more about what we've learned in that in the episode on the 1s. And 1s see everything that's wrong in the world, and we want to make it right. And so what that would mean for me in the context of parenting is I would come home from work, walk straight into the house, into the kitchen, and I would first see the trash that needed to be taken out, or the dirty dishes in the sink, or I could run in a list of things that need to be done. And I would see those things sometimes at the expense of saying hello to the people I love. And so I have, in a lot of moments, had my wife say to me, don't forget to say hello, in this really fun, great reminder of a way that I could miss the people that I love the most in this world because I'm so focused on the things that are wrong that need to be attended to. So this tool has helped me be more present with the people I love, because at the end of the day, I just don't care about the garbage in my house, and the dishes will get washed when the dishes will get washed, but I don't want to miss the people I love. So it offers a lot of user-friendly practices along those lines. What else would you say?
Well, I would go back to this couple that I counseled their daughter, 2 decades ago. And I will never forget the mom telling me that they had just celebrated their 25th anniversary. And she said, you know what I gave my husband? And I said, no, I'd love to hear. And she said, I gave him a card that said, happy 25th anniversary. I'm finally going to stop trying to change you. And I loved
so
it.
good.
And I think it has stayed with me because part of it might be being a 1, but I think it's mostly being a human, that it is so easy to try to change the people that we love.
Indeed, it is.
And I think I'm so excited about this. You have learned so much more through Suzanne than I have, but I think for me, the Enneagram has been the single best tool to give myself and others more grace. And also to understand growth points in a really good way. But I think I'm not very good at giving others grace, and I wish I was better. And the Enneagram has helped me become better. And so as I say that, one thing we want you to hear us say is, please don't just listen to your number.
Yes.
Please. Definitely listen to your number, and definitely send your husband his number. But also, not that you're trying to change him, but also it is really helpful for me to have a good awareness of all 9 types, because I know which types I struggle with the most. And there are certainly those. And so then when I encounter someone who's coming from that perspective, I can think, oh, it's just because they're a blank. Not that I'm trying to label them. I'm not trying to reduce them to only that number at all. I'm using it as a tool for me to let them off the hook.
It's great.
And so that would be number 1, the reason I'm so excited that we're talking about it. But number 2, at least for me, but again, I think this is a human problem, that one of our biggest issues in relationship is not just trying to change people, but also making assumptions about them. And I think in 2 ways in particular. One is I'm feeling so convicted, everything I'm saying. I don't assume the best. And I think when we don't have a good understanding of the other person, it's really easy not to assume the best. And 2, I think we assume that others not only will, but should think like, feel like us. And so when they don't, we think they're doing something wrong. Something's wrong with them. How often do we say, well, I would never? We're immediately assuming the worst about them and assuming they should act like us. And so I think this takes out the I would never, because they're not me. They don't, as you said, see the world in the way that I see the world. And so, again, more grace for them, more growth for me. I did something a week ago that I was in a room full of people who saw the world very differently than I do. And it was so good for me. It was so good for me to be able to appreciate their strengths that I think, had I not known the Enneagram, I would have been very black and white about it. and I could step into more gray and appreciate them for exactly who they are. So I want us to be listening to every number.
Will you talk some about why we use this tool at Daystar and how we've seen it be helpful for families?
Oh, so incredibly helpful for families. And I love to meet with families together. And one of the first things I will do is I'll use the Enneagram. And I've never told Suzanne that I do this or asked her permission. Hopefully she'd be fine with it. Suzanne, are you okay with this? So what I will do is pull out the road back to you. I know we're not really supposed to do tests. Tests aren't always helpful, but I'm not just doing that. But what I'll do is and you could do this as a family. There are 20 statements at either the beginning or the end of each chapter. I can't remember. The end. And so I will have each family member pull out a piece of paper, make a column down the left-hand side of their page. David's showing, if you're on YouTube, you can see the road back to you. Number 1 through 9. And then I'll read the statements, which as a family, you could even take turns doing that. It could be fun to get the kids more invested. Now, not pre-7th grade, because part of the Enneagram is being willing to tell on yourself, and not many under 7th graders know how to do that. And most 7th and 8th graders think they're the really fun Enneagram numbers because they don't quite have enough self-awareness, but it's fun to do it anyway, just to start the conversation. So I'll read those statements, have them make tally marks, and then the ones they have the most tally marks-ish, 3 or 4, we'll read more about it from the book. And then we really find ourselves more the more we learn about it, but it gives us a starting place at least to know where to look. So I love doing that with families because I think all of a sudden you can see the light bulbs going off in their heads of, oh, that's why you do that. That's why you need that from me. That's why, Mom, it helps you when we actually apologize. Different things like that. It's so helpful. So that would be one of the things that I love about it. Also, I recommend families with older kids, high school kids, college kids. Frequently, I say, I want you to get on Suzanne Stabile's website, and I want you to find a weekend seminar she's doing. Make a fun trip out of it. Go together and learn together. We did one this past month, and one of your boys went with us.
All 3 of my kids have gone at different points along the way. It was an incredible family trip.
Yes, and my sister and brother-in-law and I all went, and we had such fun conversations around the dinner table.
We went out and had great Mexican food afterwards. Yes. Had the best conversations.
Yes. And the third thing I would say about it in terms of using it as a family is what I love, particularly using it with kids, is, it is so hard to tell on yourself. And it's hard to say, this is a place I really struggle. And it all of a sudden gives us this language that you say things maybe with a little more bluntness, a little more intensity than other people do because you're an 8. Not because something's wrong with you. It's just your delivery sometimes is going to be different, and it's good to be aware of that. I mean, I feel like it takes so much of the sting out of that self-awareness as kids are learning to be more self-aware in a really beautiful way. So I love it for that. I want you to talk about, how do you feel like it's helpful for families in our practice?
Well, it's interesting. You just then began speaking to what I would say I think is one of the most helpful places. I remember years ago using it in an adolescent boys group with juniors and seniors in high school, and it was fascinating to me how much more willing they were to talk about the things they struggle with within their number than their individual experience. So it makes it universal and not so personal. Like,
yes,
oh yeah, you know what? All 7 struggle in that way. And I have found a lot of evidence of where I think parents even feel freed up in that, may have been beating themselves up and then finding out, oh my goodness, that's true for everybody in my number. And so I love the freedom of figuring out there are a lot of universal things that are true. I think secondly, it just enhances curiosity instead of judgment. I love when you talked about the assumption piece. I think it's instinctive for every one of us to some degree. You and I would argue it's particularly instinctive for those of us as ones who, because we see everything that's wrong and want to make it right, that includes people. And so that being the case, I have been fascinated how it's moved me deeper and deeper into curiosity instead of criticism. And so I think it's invaluable. And go back to Sissy's statement a few minutes ago. I love when she talked about not reducing people. There are A lot of adults in this world who I've experienced, even hearing the word Enneagram, will say something along the lines of, don't put me in a box. I don't like being boxed in. And what we would love to say is, we're all in a box already. You're just going to understand the box you're in a lot better. And so no one's going to put you in the box.
Yes.
You're already in one. There's a news flash for you right there.
Boxes. I'm an Enneagram 1, but I'm also an introvert. And I'm also,
there it is.
I'm an Arkansas Razorback fan. Like, there are a million things we could say that we're in boxes.
And so we're just learning more about the box we're in. And when you know yourself first, I think it is a jumping off point for us. We're saying repeatedly, having more compassion, awareness, and understanding for other people. So that'd be my second thought. Thirdly, we are asked often, like, when can I know my kid's number? And a couple of things to think about there. One would be, I've heard it said several times in Enneagram wisdom that a kid's number is often pretty locked in somewhere between 8 and 11. We would argue that we've seen kids who drop crumbs even earlier than that. And we're going to even talk.
I'm seeing some around my world these days, for sure.
We're going to talk about a particular tool in just a second that I think allows us to begin to understand some things and maybe narrow it down to 3 numbers in a couple of minutes. But Sissy and I want to say with a lot of clarity that we want to give the slow work of development all the time and space it needs, that kids are growing, developing people, and we're going to see new evidence in different stages. And so as we're seeing evidence, the way we love to think about it, we actually learn from 2 of our dear friends who are going to be back on the podcast in this series, Jill and Andy Gullahorn, remarkable people who've been using and studying this tool for a long time. And they talked about with their 3 kids, treating it like a working hypothesis. Isn't that a great way to think about it?
Great way to say it.
So let's use this working hypothesis and see how it holds up. Like, see how it still fits at 18 in ways maybe it did at 8, and see where it might have changed. And we've got some new theories or ideas, but leaving it open to, again, trust the work of development and giving our kids space to grow and mature and change. Because one of the easiest mistakes to make, we should note this as well, is to see evidence of a particular pattern or struggle in a person's life and assume they're that number. And here's the thing, not all 1s are OCD, and not all 2s are codependent, and not all 7s have ADHD, and not all 6s have anxiety. But just because you might bend a little more toward order as a 1 may mean you just bend a little more toward order and like things to be a certain way. And so watch for where I think we can start assigning too much to the kids we love out of a struggle place that may not be true about an overall number, because as we're going to talk throughout, your number is really rooted in your core motivation. And we'll talk more about that as we go forward. But let's think about it as a working hypothesis. So
I love that.
How are we going to break it down?
Well, I just had a thought as you were talking.
Tell it.
I think it would be really fun for families to listen to this together.
That's a great idea.
If you have what would you say? 7th grader and up?
Could be a great conversation starter.
On a road trip, driving to and from somewhere when they don't want to talk to you anyway. It just could be a great conversation
That's a great idea.
So what we're going to do is each episode or each number, the 2 of us are going to do an episode, and then we've invited in some really wise friends that are that number to talk about their experience with it as parents or as folks who love kids. And so let's talk about what we're going to do in each one.
Okay, we're going to start out with an overview of each number, and we're going to go back and forth and just talk about some things that are true about each number that we hope will help you have a little more confirmation around being in that number if you're confused or uncertain. But if you have a lot of certainty, some freedom, hopefully, in hearing these realities being stated.
And then we're going to talk about strengths that you have as parents in that particular number, or as grandparents, or as aunts, wherever you are in the life of a child, strengths particularly that come out around that child.
And then we're going to talk about the struggles.
Oh, maybe turn that part off if you're listening with your kids. Just kidding.
What'll come next?
Then we're going to talk about a growth point for each number. So a thing we want to kind of have as a focus of a way we want to be growing. I have that certainly these days.
And then we're going to talk about a grace point. We're going to go back and forth with growth and grace a lot because this tool allows for both in extraordinary ways. And our hope is that in the grace point, you may even end up with a mantra, something that you could be saying with regularity. I'm going to talk about what mine is as a 1 when we jump in that episode.
Then we're going to talk about 3 things that we want every parent specifically to know that is that number or grandparent.
And then we'll talk lastly about that working hypothesis. So some things that we have observed with kids over the years that might help in the study of them as you're kind of forming that hypothesis that tend to be more true of kids in each of the numbers.
Yes. Okay. Let's give them a kind of a overview. Let's get into it a little.
Before we do, though, I need to throw in a disclaimer, and I may make some folks uncomfortable right now, and that's okay.
It's okay.
For any of you listening who have had some hesitation, at some point a little while back, I don't know exactly when, we began hearing a lot of folks say they were concerned about the origins of the Enneagram. And there had evidently been a person in the evangelical space who has a big platform who I think had been pretty negative and had said, as I understand it, maybe that they did a deep dive for 48 hours into the origins and had a lot of concerns. Well, we would want to respectfully disagree with that person and to say, we've, as we mentioned, been studying it under people who have been studying this for decades. So I'm going to go with 40 years over 48 hours.
And people we really trust spiritually.
And people we really trust spiritually. And again, we also have seen way too much evidence in our own lives and in the lives of families we've worked with of where it has been an extraordinary tool for growing spiritually. So we just want to simply say, if that has been your caution, we want to challenge you to be open-minded in approaching it because we've just seen too much value, or we wouldn't devote this much time to it within this season if we hadn't seen all the evidence of grace and growth in the ways we have. So
thank you for that reminder.
Absolutely. With that said, we're going to start out. We're just going to go ahead and get some hard things out of the way. We're going to start out with ones.
Wait, but before you hear it, know that we're saying this with so much grace. We're still really on your team. We're really cheering you on.
We are.
And give it to him.
The Reformer is the name given to the 1. And as I mentioned, Reformers see everything that's wrong, and we want to make it right, sometimes including our children. What about 2s?
2s are the helper. Anne Lamott says, help is the sunny side of control.
Say that one more time.
Help is the sunny side of control. And so sometimes your help is not so helpful. And I want you to hear me graciously say, as a therapist working with kids, I believe sometimes our help, very well-intentioned help, contributes to the problem of anxiety in the world today with kids. We're going to explain all these a lot more as we jump into the numbers.
A little taste right now. The name given to the 3 is the Achiever. And throughout the numbers, all 9 numbers, we're going to be talking about how the best parts of you are also the worst parts of you. That's true for every one of us. So an example of that for 3s would be that they are high achieving. They accomplish so much. I'm so envious of how much 3s can accomplish. And they often look amazing doing it. And it can be tempting, I think, for 3s, and we'll dive deeper into this, for there to be some pressure on your kids to fall in line sometimes. We'll talk more about that.
4s are the individualists. And we would say to 4s, as much as you crave unique and extraordinary experiences, the everyday of parenting can be one of the most ordinary things a person can do, which can make it really hard and tedious for 4s.
Yes. 5 is the investigator. And investigators can be so busy researching something or onboarding information that they can forget to be present with the thing or the person itself.
6 is the loyalist. And as David learned from his dog trainer years ago, anxiety travels down the leash. And so 6s, we would want you to hear us say your worry, your fear, your anxiety impacts your kids, no matter what it looks like. And traditionally, there are 2 ways that it shows up with 6s, which we're going to talk about in that episode. But we really say there's a continuum because we've got somebody who's a little bit of an anomaly coming to talk to us, who might just be my sister. And we want to be aware because it's going to impact your kids, whatever it looks like.
The 7 is the adventure. And 7s bring fun. They crave fun. And as we know, sometimes parenting is just not very much fun in certain moments, in certain seasons. And your kids even need you at times to be the bad guy. So we're going to talk about that challenge uniquely.
And 8 is known as the leader. There are leaders in other numbers as well, but that is one of the names for the 8. And David is going to tell a great story in our 8 episode that I will never forget since I heard you say it, about a dad who literally learned to get smaller and to dial down some of the intensity that is a huge part of how you connect, helping you relate to your kids in a less intimidating way.
And the 9 is the peacemaker. And when peace is your priority, which it is for the 9, you could miss an opportunity for kids to feel safe within your strength. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like.
So how excited are you about this season now? Feeling a little convicted? I am.
Growth and grace.
Growth and grace. That's what we're going to have for each other throughout this whole process. More growth for each of us, more grace for each other, less assuming, more grace for ourselves, and leaning into what it looks like to parent or grandparent or teach or aunt on my part with more growth and grace. We believe this season is going to be great learning for all of us included. I mean,
Indeed.
Even prepping for these, I've learned a lot more. And we believe it's going to help us love the kids in our lives with more wisdom, more intentionality, more rootedness in who we are, and more hope for who we are and who they're becoming.
I'm so excited about this season.
Too. And you all, as we're saying that, share this with your friends. Make sure you're subscribed, downloading each of the episodes, because we hope this is going to be something that's helpful for everybody in all of our lives.
Yes.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible. Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.